Hail friends! Long time no see, eh? Well, as I mentioned 80 videos ago, I've been working on Rembrandt master studies, so here's a process of that for your viewing pleasure. Now, it seems in our ever-increasingly secular world that while spirituality isn't going away anytime soon because humans seem to have an innate hunger for it, religiosity is on the decline. But is religion not what guides one's spirit? I define religion as philosophy plus ritual, your beliefs, and how you live them. Each person must live in accordance with their own values and work on bringing them into alignment. And by looking at the past, what we started with, and core ideas that have secured humanity's soul throughout the ages, I think we can set up frameworks for ourselves that aid in our path, or dharma, if you will. Just a heads up, I'll be using the words reverence and respect ad nauseum. I've noticed that some of the earliest philosophers and religions got quite a bit right, or at least seem to have observed timeless wisdom that either we have forgotten or should keep in mind. Think Heraclitus or Zeno, or the Rig Veda. These historical characters and myths are arguably the backbone on which modern ideas and religions are built upon. Is it possible to cut away the fat and take away what has allowed humanity to thrive without modern distractions and blinders? What has allowed us to get to this point? Science is all well and fine, but spirituality is what humans have centered their lives around at least since the Upper Paleolithic period. Look at modern society, which is so reliant on technology, divorced from nature, and hyper-materialistic. And look at the rates of mental illness compared to more religious, less technologically advanced times. Hell, compare the mental states of people in modern cities to modern hunter-gatherers. I think it's safe to say we've thrown the baby out with the holy water, and I'd like to explore what that holy water might be, and what we can incorporate into our secularizing cultures to preserve timeless, practical wisdom that can carry on into the future. Today I will be identifying the traits of primitive religions, as well as what newer religions brought to the table that are worth preserving. And perhaps we can fit the pieces together and see if we can incorporate some of these elements into our own lives. I'm going to keep things pretty grounded. My intention is not to turn the world into fire-worshipping pagans, but to lay out concepts that can be integrated in both mystical or rational fashions. So let's start with the most basic primal concepts of religion. The foundation of all religion is animism, the belief that all things have a spirit. Does this mean all things are conscious? Perhaps they carry consciousness particles or something, but we can't know that for a fact. The main thing is that everything has a history and character. Just think about what the average rock has gone through over its existence. My favorite way of looking at it is you have two axes, a Walmart axe and your great-grandfather's axe. Your great-grandfather carved the handle himself, hammered and tempered the metal himself. With it, cut down the very trees that made his home. Passed it to your grandfather, who passed it to your father, who passed it on to you. And then there's the Walmart axe that was made on an assembly line. These axes will have vastly different qualities, or spirit, if you will. Having reverence for the things around you, recognizing the spirit in everything, changes how you move about the world. It fosters a kind of empathy that bleeds into other parts of life. Symbolism and animism is where spirituality stems from. I would say these concepts are a recognition of the pneuma, but that's a topic for another video. From animism, we also get the concept of land spirits. Just about every culture has had some conception of land spirits, or entities to honor outside of material wildlife. From the Native Americans to the Old Norse, the concept of land spirits fosters reverence and respect for the natural world. Sun worship. My own definition of God, being logos and pneuma, might be a little abstract, esoteric, or a semantic stretch for some people. But the sun? That's about as literal as you can get to an all-powerful God that warrants our worship. It allows us to live, for our world to exist, and is arguably the most godlike force we have any kind of direct relationship to. We owe it our lives and respect. Honestly, if you've got nothing else to worship, the sun is a pretty decent and obvious choice. Why not worship a star, i.e. a literal celestial body? The stars have been referred to as gods before, and they kinda are with their own domains they oversee. And as far as we know, our star is the only one that presides over life. Point is, it warrants our respect. On the topic of celestial bodies, as far back as 2500 BC, humanity has studied the stars and has curiously come to similar conclusions based on their observations, despite never interacting with each other. The planet Venus being associated with love and sex, for example. Is this truly important? Maybe not by itself, but it goes to show how lots of non-material observations transcend specific groups. Sacred geometry is another great example, or meditation and prayer, or how the earliest religions revered certain animals like cats or cows, especially cows. I mean, we owe our survival to them. We also owe our survival to our ancestors. And guess what else the ancients revered? Ancestors. We literally wouldn't exist without them and their toils. Or accidents, but either way, ancient faiths were really centered around gratitude and reverence for the world around us. Also, just a quick aside, I feel I've been relying on white gouache too much lately, so I swore to never use it for correction, only for augmentation. But this piece really needed it, so...
You have broken your oath, Paladin.
Shit. I think it's worth acknowledging the patterns that ancients observed separate from each other. Like how just about every culture has had fertility rituals. This makes sense to honor the spirits of fertility, doesn't it? Honor women in the family because they are what keep the goodness of humanity alive, and appeal to deities of fertility to help the crops. I don't think we should have cast aside the spiritual gravitas of fertility because things are so much more convenient these days. In fact, our structures are so fragile that maybe we shouldn't take the concept of fertility for granted. Sacrifices were and sometimes are made to the spirits. Reality is transactional to varying extents, and this carries to the spiritual realm. You want to eat, you must put in effort. You don't put in effort, you either die from starvation, or you grow fat and slowly die of health issues as your servants stuff your face. If you want to give your crops an edge by appealing to the spirits or gods of fertility, you must offer something. A pouring of libations perhaps, or maybe sacrificing a calf if your whole village is desperate enough for that particular harvest. You want Buddhist enlightenment? You must die to yourself and become empty. You want Christian enlightenment? You must die to the world and live only through Christ. And then we have burial rites, honoring our dead. Perhaps this doesn't require too much explanation. Burial rites may stem from the Golden Rule, but think about the animistic societies they developed in. There is spiritual or symbolic significance in either returning the body to the earth so it might feed new life, or burning it on a pyre so that the soul might be free. You can also think of it so the ashes spread out to nourish many plants in smaller ways. Either way, there's an element of regeneration and returning to the earth. The thing that really keeps religions alive is community. In fact, one might argue that religion is the soul of the community, as in it is what the community believes, and how that social organism structures its life. I don't think this needs too much explanation either. Even the non-religious recognize the power of community in modern churches. Humility was kind of a given before cities were a thing. Arrogance got you killed. But with the advent of civilization, we acquired new problems. Because humans. Personal discipline and cultivation became more important because things became easier in cities. No longer was conduct sculpted through the rigors of wilderness life. Now, superficiality had become a real threat. And what's the buffer? Discipline and personal character. So, with the popularity of cities, humility and the interconnectedness of all things was something we needed to remind ourselves of. This is where religions started to evolve beyond what we consider to be more pagan or shamanistic ideals. There was more focus on exercise and movement, like yoga or Olympic Games, emotional and sexual discipline, balance in all things, focus on the breath, which probably has roots in older shamanic practices, stillness, meditation, philosophy of pain like we see with Stoicism, Taoism, or Abrahamic religions, how everything is a part of God's plan and all things are ultimately for the best. Speaking of Abrahamic religions, about 2,300 years ago, Western philosophy really began to solidify. Civilizations were lasting longer and embracing human progress. Forgiveness as a virtue began to gain prominence, which we see in both the East during that time with Taoism and in the West with Stoic philosophers. So when Christianity came along, it brought with it one idea that had never been popularized before: radical love. Not just loving one's neighbor, but loving one's enemy. Now that is a powerful concept that has shaped the world in massive ways. It's where we get peaceful protests from, and arguably is the number one reason segregation ended as early as it did thanks to the efforts of people like Martin Luther King Jr. Nonviolence simply resonated with the common person more than violence. Loving one's enemy is something I think is criminally overlooked by Christians and non-Christians alike, and is a big reason Eastern Orthodoxy is gaining traction over other Christian sects. Though I understand some people may have different experiences. Not everyone needs to believe in animism or land spirits per se, but everyone should understand the role such things have played in humanity's spiritual history. We are becoming further divided, and until we recognize some of these fundamentals, we'll continue to rip each other's throats out. Religion isn't bad. Organized religion isn't bad. It's about values, and taking a step back to see what's important, what matters in life. Your own little corner of the world, your own immediate circle of friends and family. I hope these tools will help you prioritize and navigate your little corner. The only way is forward, but there are still some things we should carry with us. And with all that being said, be sure to smash that dislike button and leave your cruelest comment down below. Farewell.